Hi everybody, I'm Eileen Abel. I'm Vice President for Academic Affairs here at the college, and it is my absolute privilege to welcome you here today. I'm really excited that the faculty who organized this event decided to make it women in STEM and not just women in math, even though math, of course, is the language of science, just to keep that in mind. I want to talk just a second about the value of going into STEM fields. I am an English major, so for me, the STEM fields have always been a little bit foreign. But my father was a biochemist, and my husband is a physicist, so I feel like I live in that world regularly. But it's so important for women to be encouraged to go into these fields for a couple reasons. One is that there are not very many women in STEM fields. I had the opportunity yesterday to go up to Fort Meade to go and take a tour of a place called the Defense Intelligence Security Agency. And we are walking through the very non-secure first floor of this lab. I didn't see one woman working at the computers. These are people who have networking skills, who have cybersecurity skills, who have data skills. And it was shocking to me, and I said something to the lab manager. I said, there are no women down here. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, oh, well, we have women here. But he said the ratio was about 70 to 30 men to women. So technology, right up the road, opportunities for women. So in a recent article in a 24/7 Wall Street website, an analysis of Department of Labor market data of the top 25 highest paying jobs, only 6 of them are not in STEM fields. So of the 21 high paying STEM occupations, 5 are medical professions and 9 of them are engineering roles. So one reason STEM people are actually paid higher than other occupations is because of the level of education they require. So first lesson here today. Go to college, stay in college, finish at least a baccalaureate degree, and go on even for a master's or PhD. So jobs that require a 4-year bachelor's degree, a master's, or a PhD are more likely to compensate workers, obviously, better. While 36.5% of full-time U.S. workers have at least a bachelor's degree, the share is at least 70% in each of these 25 professions. So you're not likely to go into some of these well-paying fields unless you have, at the minimum, a bachelor's degree. Another factor driving up salaries in these occupations is experience. So if you have the opportunity to do internships and to do co-ops as you're going through your degree programs, take every opportunity to do that. Country's highest paid professions highlight another problem in the labor force, and one that I just mentioned to you, the gender pay gap. Okay, the typical female full-time worker earns about 82 cents for every dollar her male counterpart earns. In addition to being paid less for the same work, another major reason for this is the low representation of females in high-paying jobs. Again, like DISA that I just talked about. Men comprise the majority of workers in all but 5 of the highest 25 highest paid positions. In 14 of those, at least 70% of the workforce is male. In just 27.7% of chief executives are women, while only 6.3% of architectural and engineering managers, the second highest paying profession, are women. So think about that. Fewer than 7% of the second highest paid profession in the United States are women. So you don't have to choose a career field just because it pays well. But if you're college educated and probably beyond the baccalaureate degree, and you are a woman studying in a field related to science, technology, engineering, or mathematics, then your chances of finding an exciting and sustainable career are virtually guaranteed. So find a mentor, find role models, stay focused, get educated, and don't ever, ever let anyone tell you you can't do it. Guest speaker today is someone who never let anyone tell her she couldn't do it. Lieutenant Rebecca Shaw attended the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, graduating with a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering in 2009. Following commissioning, she attended flight training at Vance Air Force Base, Oklahoma, and Naval Air Station Corpus Christi, Texas, earning her Naval Aviator wings in April 2011. She attended P3 Fleet Replacement Squadron training with Patrol Squadron 30 at Naval Air Station Jacksonville, Florida. In February 2012, she reported for her first operational flying tour with the world-famous Golden Eagles Patrol Squadron 9. While attached to VP-9, Lieutenant Shaw deployed to Sigonella, Italy, Ceuta Bay, Greece, Rota, Spain, and conducted detached operations in Keflavik, Iceland, and this is in English, I'm not going to be able to get this right, Lossiemouth, Scotland, supporting naval operations in the Mediterranean, Northern Africa, and Northern Atlantic, to include Operation Nimble Warning. In spring of 2015, Lieutenant Shaw was selected to attend U.S. Naval Test Pilot School as a member of a class of 149. She graduated from the Engineering Test Pilot School in June 2016. Following graduation, she reported to Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 20, serving as an MQ-4C Triton Project Officer, isn't that impressive? And P-8A Poseidon Test Pilot, hence the picture. In fall of 2016, she was accepted into Johns Hopkins University Professional Engineering Program, where she is currently completing her master's degree in Space Systems Engineering. Lieutenant Shaw has over 1,200 hours of flight time and has flown a combination of 20 models of jet, prop, and rotary wing aircraft. Her awards include the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals, 2 of those, the Meritorious Unit Commendation, and the National Service Defense Medal. Please help me welcome Lieutenant Rebecca Shaw.
It's an honor to be here speaking to you. You guys are the next generation of STEM and the next leaders in a lot of different career fields, and so the honor is really all mine. Before I get started, I'd like to say thanks, Sandra, for inviting me to be the keynote speaker. And then I'm going to talk about you guys before I talk about me. The World Technology Day is both exciting and it's revolutionary. We're getting ready to go to Mars. We have cars that drive themselves. And we have the vastness of everything of human knowledge. You can get it on your cell phones, whether you're swiping, texting, posting, liking. It's all on there. And it's pretty phenomenal that it's that accessible. STEM's everywhere, and it's really cool. And we need women. We need young, creative leaders. You guys are going to lead these fields. On the drive up here this morning, I'm looking at you guys. You guys are the next astronauts. You're the next pilots. You're the next CEOs. You're going to run your small businesses. Like, it's going to be amazing what you're going to do. So the honor is really all mine, and I'm really excited for you that you're interested in STEM and that you guys want to join these fields, because there's a lot going on, and it's only going to get better. So what does a career in STEM look like? It looks like a lot of different career fields, and you're going to see a lot of them today. I can talk to you about my experience with STEM and how I ended up here as a Navy test pilot, talking to you this morning. The experience I share today, there's a lot in my bio, probably a lot of just like military jargon and terms. So I'm going to try to share a couple of the experiences and the moments that I found really critical that helped me succeed in a STEM career. To be honest, when I was in high school, I never intended to join the military, and I didn't think I was going to be an engineer. I have a twin brother who, when he was 10 years old, he said that he was going to go to the Naval Academy and become a jet pilot. And if I remember, when I was 10 years old, I was like, well, I'm going to be a unicorn. And that might still work out. But my parents kind of had this rule with having twins. They said, well, they're always going to do the same thing. So that meant if my brother wanted to learn karate, I had to learn karate. And if I wanted to dance ballet, my brother also got to dance ballet. And I'd like to tell you that my parents were really progressive and they were really fighting gender biases, but we lived in a small town and I just don't think they wanted to drive that much. So twins was kind of like a 2-for-1 deal for them. So we were in high school, we were looking at colleges. We went and saw the Naval Academy in Annapolis. And again, my brother, when he was 10, decided that he would do it. So at 18, that was an easy decision for him. I was kind of on the fence. I was looking at a lot of different schools. I was lucky enough to have a lot of options. And they had this summer seminar program where you can go and kind of see what the university's like, which I really recommend. Any program where you can kind of go see what you're going to do before you do it. It's good to do some research and figure it out for yourself. But I remember going and running around and playing military and all these things and feeling really challenged. And I remember every day feeling like I had overcome something and I accomplished something and I was more confident. And I was like, this might be cool. So I was lucky enough to get selected for the Naval Academy with my brother. And we showed up in 2005 to graduate in class of 2009. Let's see, what else? The Naval Academy is a technical school, so I'm not sure, again, it's up in Annapolis, but I don't know how exposed you guys are to kind of that area. So at the Naval Academy, even if you have a degree in English, you have to take physics, calculus, all the sciences. Regardless of if you have what would normally be a liberal arts major, you are gonna pretty much graduate. You're graduating with a BS, like you're getting a lot of science. So I knew going there I would have a technical degree, but I really wanted to major in history. I always really enjoyed the topic. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities for me to do STEM because my parents had both worked in engineering fields. But when I showed up to the academy, I didn't think I'd be getting a degree in STEM. They had, so your sophomore year at the Naval Academy, you select your major. You don't do it when you first show up. I don't know if they do that in colleges now, but that's not the way that we did it. So every single department kind of had like a host night where you could go and see all the departments and kind of see what you wanted to do. The English department, for people who wanted to major in English, had ice cream, which was awesome. That's like a huge selling point for like what you're gonna pick your degree in, but I thought that was awesome. The one that really impacted me was the mechanical engineering department. So I showed up for the night of the mechanical engineering department. No ice cream, like at all. But there was a Navy commander who stood up there and he wrote 2 numbers on the board. And he wanted us to guess what they meant. So these were the 2 numbers he wrote on the board. Does anyone have any guess what these 2 numbers mean? Does anyone want to venture a guess? It wasn't starting. That's a good one. It wasn't starting salary. I didn't have a guess. I didn't have a guess either. I was still distracted by the fact there was no ice cream at the time. But he said that the top number was the number of engineers that India would graduate that year in STEM fields. And the bottom number was the number that the US would graduate. And it's astonishing. And he said, how do we, as a country, plan to sort of progress and stay competitive and lead the way into like the next generation of space and all these different fields if our number is so much lower? We're going to fall behind. So I was like, well, if not a lot of people are doing it, it's probably challenging. And I kind of almost felt like it was like my patriotic duty. Like I really love America. I'm in the military. And I thought, this is something that we need. We need more people in STEM. We definitely need more women in STEM. And so I decided to get my degree in mechanical engineering. And it definitely was challenging. But it opened a lot of doors that when I was like 18 or 19, I didn't realize like I would be in this career field today. And I'm able to do the things that I can now, and I have opportunities to fly a lot of different aircraft and travel the world and speak to you guys this morning because of this decision I made to get a degree in engineering. Choosing to become a pilot was a little bit less clear than that. At the Naval Academy, your college is paid for by the government. You pay it back with military service. So you can either go, after you graduate, you have 5 to 7 or 8 years to pay back college. And it's a great education, so it's worth it. But the jobs are to be on a ship. You can go submarines, which is now open to women, which is really cool because when I went, it wasn't. So that's a really interesting field. You could go Marine Corps, you could go aviation. So I'm coming up on senior year, and I need to make a decision of how I'm going to pay back my school. Well, living on a ship didn't seem very glamorous to me at the time. Women couldn't go submarines. And as far as being a Marine, I wasn't really into like carrying heavy things or being dirty. So I was like, that's completely out. So it came back to aviation, and I had a friend who was a flight instructor. And he's like, well, before you do something, like let's go flying. Just one day up in Maryland, let's do it. So we took a Cessna up, and it was amazing. It was completely magical. I'll never forget how cool it was to fly an aircraft yourself. The first time the wheels left the ground, like I was hooked. I was like, I cannot believe that somebody would pay me to do this. And I still can. It's awesome. As far as getting paid to do something you really love, I highly recommend it because it'll never feel like a job. The road to earning my wings was far less magical. As shown by this picture, this is what you look like after you've been yelled at for an instructor by an hour and a half and your hair's been in a helmet. So that's me in flight school. I definitely wasn't a unicorn in the airplane. It wasn't great. I did very well my first few flights in flight school. So you have like a year and a half of flight training to become a pilot, and then you go off and you do your Navy pilot thing. I had really good beginner's luck. I was really good starting out. And suddenly, I started failing flights. And the first big test in flight school is they're going to send you up by yourself, solo, to fly the plane without an instructor, with only 10 hours of actual flying experience. And that's it. Like, you got to study for it. Like, you got to be ready. Like, this is the first big thing. So I went up for my first flight test. I studied. I had my little G suit and my helmet and everything. I failed it. I failed my first test. And at that point, things get pretty critical, right? Because I got to pay back college, and they're expecting me to be a pilot. That's what they hired me to do, and I might not be showing the aptitude for that. So we're coming back from the flight, and you know what it's like after most of you probably don't know what it's like after you completely bomb something, but it's not a good feeling. I'm walking back in, and the instructor's like, so, how do you think you did? You ready solo? I was like, I'm close. And he's like, yeah, I would agree with that. But because I had failed this test, they had to figure out whether they were going to give me another shot or they were going to put me on a boat. So I sat around for 2 months, and he told me there was a 5% chance that they were going to keep me. And I mean, I can do math. 5 out of 100% is a pretty low number. I was like, I really don't want to be on a boat. But I studied, I helped my classmates, I worked really hard. I had a lot of instructors and people who really believed in me, and they gave me another shot. And on April 1st, 2011, I became winged as a naval aviator, which is a really cool thing to share with you guys today. So this is a far better picture, because this is the day I got my wings. Thanks. But I share that story with you because I think it's really important to know that most of you are probably type A, really high achievers. It's okay to fail sometimes. It's absolutely okay to stumble, and I think a lot of people who are high achieving, they get pretty far in their careers without ever struggling in anything, and then when they struggle, they don't know how to continue. It becomes a whole sort of identity crisis. But know that it's okay to struggle, it's okay to fail. You just keep working hard and you get through it, and you'll continue on. But it's completely normal to struggle sometimes, especially when you pick a difficult career field like you guys are mostly going into. So after finishing flight school, I was lucky enough to get my first choice aircraft, the P-3 Orion. Does anyone know what P-3 is? Show of hands. Has anyone ever seen one before? Okay. So this is a P-3, and I took this picture off the internet. I did not cite it, so that's not good practice. But you can see I tried to pick something with a person next to it so you could see how big it is. Does anyone want to take a guess on how much this aircraft weighs? It's 135,000 pounds. Does anyone want to guess how much I weigh? Okay. I weigh 135 pounds, or that's what I'll tell you today. And so this is 1,000 times, and this plane was mine. I would sign for it. This was my aircraft, and I would, just kind of back up a little bit. I guess I'm always around military people, so I'm not used to having to explain all the weird jargon and things that I use. So after flight school, you go to your first duty station, and you get your aircraft, and it's your first time really doing missions. I wasn't in school anymore. It was my time to go back and do missions supporting the United States at home and abroad. So it was pretty cool. At 26 years old, I was signing for this plane. I was the aircraft commander. I just hey, U.S. Navy government, can I have this $36 million plane for the next 8 hours? I'm sure, just sign here, which is awesome at 26 years old. I was the oldest person on the plane. I was the most senior officer, and I was the only woman, and that was pretty cool. I think the military is a great place for young people to get leadership experiences that you might not get in the civilian world. And when you look around, I remember looking around everyone working on the aircraft, everyone working the field, everyone's under the age of 30. So it's pretty incredible that they train you to do that, and that young people are pretty much running our military. Or maybe it's terrifying. I think it's cool. So I got to that, and then I of course had to pick my first duty station, and a lot of times the Navy picks it for you. So I got P3s, and as you might have heard in my bio, the Navy sent me to Hawaii. So this was my office. This is me coming into land in Honolulu on a normal day in Hawaii. This is probably a bad weather day in Hawaii. And this is just another picture flying out Hawaii. And I was getting paid to do this. So there's some pretty great opportunities out there. So back to STEM, not all pilots have a background in engineering. It's not required, but it helped me in my career field because I really knew my aircraft. I knew how the engines work. I knew the systems. I had a general idea of the best way to implement it, the best way to use it, and I think it made me a better pilot. It also allowed me to be able to have very open and honest discussion with my maintainers on what was actually going on with the plane. And I could use that skill to describe to my leaders and my peers who didn't have a degree in engineering what was going on. And I think that they would tell you that was really valuable to be able to kind of translate that. So you'll find that when you get a degree in engineering or math and sciences, that sometimes you'll be a translator to people who don't have those skills, which means that you get to help people, which is actually kind of like an unintentional cool part of doing STEM, because not a lot of people will take on these degree fields. The other cool thing about being an engineer was it allowed me to be a test pilot. You have to be an engineer to get into test pilot school, and that's actually down in Pax River. Some of you might have some experience with the base. So there's only 4 accredited test pilot schools in the world. They're in England, France, here in Maryland, and then one out in California that's run by the Air Force. A test pilot school in general, it takes experienced pilots and it trains them to be test pilots. Test pilots generally are the first people to fly a brand new aircraft before anyone else flies it and make sure that the engineers got it right and it's safe for other pilots. It requires a lot of engineering. So show of hands, does anyone know who John Glenn is? Okay. Sunita Williams, Jim Lovell, Mark Kelly. So these are all people who have graduated from Navy Test Pilot School, and these are my heroes. They're astronauts, they're leaders in science and engineering, and I wanted to be like them. So in 2008, I set the goal of going to test pilot school, and in 2015, when it was time for me to apply, I was lucky enough to be selected. And it was awesome. It was just totally cool. I was in class 149. It's an 11-month course. The institution itself is legendary. Just the amount of people who have gone through and the difficulty of just being selected. I was a far better student than I was in undergrad and flight school because I had now had these experiences to sort of grow on. I had, you get your undergrad, you go out and you work in the field, you start to figure it out a little bit better. The flying was incredible. My classmates were great. The men and women were the best engineers, pilots, and officers I'd ever worked with. And these were the other women in my class. There were 30 of us. There were 30 people in the class. There was 1 woman in each syllabus. And so these women were absolutely remarkable. Rebecca Bennett on the left is a Navy helicopter pilot stationed out in San Diego, and she had a degree in chemistry from Cornell. And the woman in the middle, Christine Hall, is a Marine, so she likes carrying heavy stuff, getting dirty, and flying jets, which is pretty impressive. And these were my classmates. We were so close. When you're with a small group of women, the ability to lean on each other is just incredible. Especially because there's not a lot of women in test pilots just in general. So I learned while I was there, I got to fly a ton of different planes. I learned the basics of aerobatics, dogfighting, took notes while breaking the sound barrier, and learned classic flight test techniques. Because it's like a graduate course, at the end we have a thesis at the end of the 11 months. So the Navy paid for me to go to Finland and fly a plane I've never flown before, and then I had 9 days to write my thesis. The travel in the military is pretty great too. On June 17th, 2016, I followed in the footsteps of my heroes, and I reached my dream of becoming a Navy test pilot. So those are just a few stories of how I got here. This is how STEM has impacted my life. I've loved every minute of it. If I hadn't put in the work early, I wouldn't have any of these opportunities. As a woman in the Navy, I believe it's a great career path for anyone. I believe the military is challenging, mentally, morally, and physically. But no other places kind of offer equal pay the way that the military does. Since everything's based on rank and timing, I think it's just a little bit more fair. That being said, I've never had any other career, so I'm just kind of guessing from what I've heard. I've always felt really comfortable going to my bosses when I see behaviors inappropriate. I've never been afraid of backlash when I see something that I know is wrong, whether it's because I'm a woman or for any other reason. And my bosses have always really met my concerns with action, and I've really appreciated that. I also feel like as a woman, I'm in a unique position because there's not a lot of women in the military, I kind of get to set the example, which sometimes is a lot of pressure, but overall, it gives me an opportunity that not a lot of other people have. I get to lead men and women, and I also get to work with men who haven't had a lot of opportunities to work with women, so I kind of get to educate them on how to do that properly, which actually brings up a lot of really interesting conversations, because there's not a lot of men who walk out and they're like, I'm going to offend a woman in the workplace today. Like, they don't wake up like that, but sometimes men who have been in the military their whole lives, they just don't know. So being able to have that dialogue, I've been able to learn a lot, and I hope that people will be able to learn a lot from me, and that's a very valuable experience. As an engineer, I can tell you that my decision to pursue a degree in engineering set me on this path where I've been able to travel the world, have an exciting career, and work alongside some of the greatest people. I hope whatever you set out to do, you find your passion and you follow it wherever it takes you, and that you never give up. Thank you. Is there time to take
so much. Yes. Does anyone have any questions for Lieutenant Shaw? What happened to your brother?
So my brother, he became a jet pilot, so he's flying down at 106, and I kind of glazed over this a little bit, but the picture of me in the jet was the day that I got to fly the same aircraft as my brother. So we were 28, and we were still twinning, which is cool. But we're still really close friends, and my parents are just completely annoyed by how much we talk about planes when we're together. So that's where we ended up. Yep.
What is the fastest plane?
The fastest plane that I've flown? I think the F-16 probably, and I guess I can't really get into numbers here because it's classified, but the F-16, that's got some power behind it. I mean, you have to be really careful not to just accidentally break the sound barrier, which is really a thing. Like, you can accidentally break the sound barrier. So that's pretty awesome for where we've gone in technology for the past 50 years. What else?
What's your favorite plane?
I've loved every plane that I've flown, so I'm a real airplane nerd just in general. From an engineering perspective, the F-18 Super Hornet. So F-18 Super Hornet, I'm sorry, I'm going to nerd out on planes now. So you guys are here for STEM, so I'm sure you might like it. Maybe not. I'm going to do it anyway. But the F-18 Super Hornet was the first time they had an integrated test team when they were designing it. So the F-18 legacy had already existed, but they kind of were like, okay, we're going to take the engineers and the pilots and the contractor engineers, and we're going to put them all together, and they're all going to work on this one team in developing an aircraft. Where usually it didn't work like that. Usually these people did this thing, and these people did over here, and at the end they would kind of put this together. So the Super Hornet was the first time they did that, and having that dialogue of having people with different backgrounds working together to make this aircraft, they absolutely crushed it. That aircraft flies like a dream. And most pilots will tell you it's because the pilot's so good, but it's because of the engineering behind it. So that's why it's my favorite, but every aircraft I've flown I've really enjoyed.
Which engineering field are you in?
So I did mechanical engineering in undergrad. At test pilot school, it's a lot of aeronautical engineering, so I've gotten to see a lot of that. They teach very basic level of it in flight school. And then I'm currently pursuing my master's in space systems engineering. And then I'm also taking classes in project management, which is a new field in engineering that when I was an undergrad, I was like, there's no way anyone's ever going to use this. And now everyone uses that. So project management's another field you'll start to hear a lot more about. But my background's in mechanical, and I'm really grateful for that because mechanical kind of covers a little bit of everything. So that's my plug for mechanical engineering.
Did you meet any of your heroes?
Yeah, actually, I've met quite a few astronauts. I try not to fangirl them when I meet them, but through test pilot school and then other opportunities like coming to events like this, I've been able to meet some just really incredible people. I got to sit down with Charles Bolden, the head of NASA, last year when I finished test pilot school, and that was phenomenal. I don't know if I could have been more nervous, but it's been really incredible. I'd like to, but I think that being able to influence other people to have a career in STEM and pursue that would be just as valuable.
We talk a lot about finding mentors that help you. Did you have a mentor that helps you?
I had so many. I had so many mentors. The Naval Academy, there are actually a lot more women that teach at the Naval Academy than are actually in the Navy, like that are in the fleet. And it's getting better. Like, I think there's more women in the military now. Naval aviation was 5% when I first joined, and now they're saying it's 11 to 14. But I had amazing mentors that were both men and women. And I would not be here today if it wasn't for them. I also, as I set a goal, and I think this is just like a really important tip, when I decided I wanted to be a test pilot, I didn't know anything about test pilot school other than what I read on the internet. So I kind of played like find a test pilot. So I would just kind of cold call people and email them. And at first it's really intimidating when you're like, hey, I want to be an astronaut, I want to do something. I should just go email somebody on the internet who's an astronaut and ask if they'd talk to me. But most people will actually talk to you for a long time about what they do. So I would say if there's something you're interested in, just start like reaching out to people who are in those fields and asking them about it. And if they don't want to talk to you about it, then they're lame and just go find somebody else. So I think mentorship is really important, and I've been lucky to have a lot of mentors.
Is there anyone in this room who wants to be an astronaut?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Did you have a question over here?
Yes. Do you still find that there's hard for women in the engineering field, no matter how successful or what they do?
It's hard. It's definitely hard. It's hard because like sometimes I'm getting tired of being the only woman in the room, but it's getting better, and you guys are going to help that. I had a really unique experience when I was in Hawaii because I kind of got to see what it's going to be like. There were 11 pilots in my squadron out of a squadron of 30, which is unheard of in the Navy. And what starts to happen when you have more women is that you're no longer like the token female. You're Becky or Crystal or Ashley. And so instead of being like, oh, well, she just got that because she was a woman, they're like, well, Becky's a plane commander, and so-and-so's a mission commander, and so-and-so's an IP, and they start to see you as an individual, and they start to base you on your performances rather than your gender. So I think it's actually really good to have more women in the field because that's the only way that we're going to combat that. And again, not a lot of men who say things they shouldn't say and do things they shouldn't do are doing it intentionally. They just don't know any better. And it's not an excuse, but it was a matter of, I'm going to go off on, I love to tell stories, so I'm sorry. But me and Christine, the Marine from the picture, she's an NFO, she's in the back seat. We're going to take a T-38 up, and we're going to go fly 450 knots in a jet that I have 10 hours in. And so I've got a lot to think about. I've got to make sure the weather's right. I've got to make sure we have the paperwork. I've got to make sure we're on the schedule properly. And I've got my flight suit. I'm like getting ready to go fly. And some guy comes up to me, one of my instructors, and he's like, Becky, you should smile more. And I was like, what? I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I should smile more? And he was like, yeah, you should just smile more. And I was like, oh, should I smile more? Because I won't share all the things I said. But I was like, I'm going to tell you because I just don't think you've ever heard that. That's actually kind of sexist. And he was like, what? And I was like, no, really. Like, I've never heard you tell the huge army guy with the mustache that he should smile more. Like, that's specifically something people say to women. And it's what it started later, because I had to go fly, was like a really interesting conversation to him about how certain comments are perceived and sort of the appearance that women are expected to have. So I challenge women who work with mostly men to not back down when they make comments like that, because some of them are jerks, and that's fine. That'll be their own problem. But some of them don't know better, and if you don't correct them, then when they find themselves in a leadership role later, they're going to say something they shouldn't say, and you're almost not helping them. So it's not easy, but it's also not something that can't be overcome, and it's getting a lot better. So that's my long comment to that.
So if you could just, because the reason I asked was because of a current situation, because she's a high school senior and applying to college for mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
And what's been said is, are you sure you can do that? That's hard. Did you take the right classes? So that's coming already before she has even stepped, out there into the world to get it. And I was just thinking, like, with some of the stuff you just said, like how we can combat that, because we're already
Yeah.
And we haven't, we're just getting started.
Wow. Well, you can do it, and it is going to be challenging. I mean, you just have to, like, we have to fight it. Like, we have to do it. We have to support each other and just not tolerate that kind of thing. A friend of mine, another pilot, we were sitting around talking about this because he has 2 daughters, and he's like, you know, I told him, I was like, when I grew up going through high school, women were teachers and nurses, and that was it. Those are great career fields. Like, I just didn't know that there were other options. And he was like, you know, I've never thought about that because as a man, I've never thought there were things that I couldn't do or that were closed off to me. And I was like, well, you kind of have to see it in order to know what else is out there. So things like this are great because you're able to see a lot of different career fields. But I think we need to support each other and just kind of instill that confidence in young women early. And I'm sorry, but you can definitely do it, and don't listen to them. That's ridiculous. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for your time.